This is the story of a boy from Rosario, Argentina, who was too small, too quiet, and too poor to be a superstar, and became the greatest footballer of his generation anyway. This is the story of Lionel Messi. Lionel Andres Messi Cuxatini was born on June 24, 1987, in Rosario, Argentina, a gritty, working-class port city about 300 kilometers northwest of Buenos Aires. Rosario isn't just any city. It's produced legends before. Che Guevara was born there. So was a golden generation of footballers. But nothing quite like what was coming. Messi was the fourth of 5 children, raised in a modest but loving home. His father, Jorge, worked in a steel factory. His mother, Celia, worked at a magnet manufacturing workshop. Football wasn't a luxury in the Messi household. It was the family religion. His older brothers played. His grandmother, Celia, the woman he credits with pushing him toward the sport and who he still honors with his goal celebration, pointing to the sky, took him to matches from the time he could barely walk. By age 5, Messi was already playing organized football for a local club called Grandoli, coached by his own father. Those who saw him then described something almost eerie. A small child who didn't just play the game, but seemed to understand it, reading the field in ways kids twice his age couldn't. At 6, he moved to Newell's Old Boys, one of Rosario's biggest clubs, joining a youth side so talented it earned the nickname, the Machine of '87, a reference to the birth year shared by most of its stars. Messi scored constantly. Locals still talk about the trail of destruction he left across youth tournaments, sometimes scoring 5, 6 goals in a single match, dribbling past entire teams like they were standing still. But there was a problem. A serious one. At around age 10 or 11, doctors diagnosed Messi with a growth hormone deficiency. His body simply wasn't producing enough of the hormone needed for normal growth. Without treatment, doctors warned, he might never grow past 4'7", a devastating diagnosis for any child, but potentially career-ending for one whose entire life was already built around professional football. The treatment existed, but it was brutally expensive, reportedly around $1,000 to $1,500 a month, a figure completely out of reach for a factory worker's family in Argentina in the late 1990s. For a while, Newell's Old Boys helped cover some costs. But as the bills piled up and the financial crisis in Argentina deepened, the support dried up. The Messi family started looking elsewhere. And that search would change football history. In 2000, the family had relatives in Catalonia, Spain, and arranged a trial for young Lionel with FC Barcelona. He was 13 years old, tiny for his age, quiet, and nervous. But the moment he touched the ball in that trial, everyone in the room understood they were looking at something rare. Barcelona's youth academy, La Masia, wanted him. But there was a catch. The club's board was hesitant to commit to a contract for a foreign teenager, worried about the costs and logistics of registering an international minor, and the negotiations dragged on for weeks. The Messi family, running out of patience and money, was ready to walk away. That's when Barcelona's sporting director at the time, Carles Rexach, stepped in. As the story goes, a story that has become one of football's most famous legends, Rexach was so certain of Messi's talent that, lacking any paper on hand, he wrote out an agreement on a paper napkin at a tennis club to prove to the family he was serious. That napkin, now a piece of football folklore, sits framed today as a symbol of the moment Barcelona bet everything on a scrawny, homesick 13-year-old from Argentina. Barcelona agreed to pay for his medical treatment. The Messi family relocated to Spain, and so began arguably the most consequential transfer in the history of the sport, not because of a transfer fee, since there wasn't one, but because of what it set in motion. Life in Spain wasn't easy at first. Messi was homesick, missed his friends and extended family back in Rosario, and had to adapt to a new country while continuing painful nightly injections of growth hormone into his legs, a routine he'd keep up for years. But on the pitch, he thrived. He tore through Barcelona's youth ranks, dominating age groups the same way he had back home, and coaches inside the club began quietly telling anyone who'd listen that they had unearthed a generational talent. By 16, he was training with the first team. On October 16, 2004, Messi made his official debut for FC Barcelona's senior side, becoming, at the time, one of the youngest players ever to appear for the club. A year later, he scored his first senior goal, a delicate chip assisted by a young winger named Ronaldinho, the Brazilian superstar who had taken Messi under his wing and would later call him his successor. The kid from Rosario had arrived. But what came next would redefine the sport. Between 2004 and 2008, Messi transformed from promising academy graduate into one of the most feared attackers in Europe. He was blindingly fast over short distances, nearly impossible to dispossess thanks to a low center of gravity, and possessed a kind of close control that made defenders look like they were chasing a ghost. In the 2005-06 season, still a teenager, he won his first Champions League title with Barcelona, though a hamstring injury kept him out of the final itself, a heartbreak he'd remember for years. By the 2008-09 season, under new manager Pep Guardiola, everything clicked into place. That season is still discussed in hushed, reverent tones by football historians. Barcelona, with Messi now the focal point of the attack, won an unprecedented treble, La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League, all in a single season. Messi scored a header in the Champions League final against Manchester United, remarkable for a player not exactly known for his aerial ability, sealing a win and Barcelona's dominance over Europe. That same year, Messi won his first Ballon d'Or, the award given annually to the world's best player. It would be the first of many. In fact, over the following years, Messi didn't just win the award repeatedly, he obliterated the record books around it, eventually amassing 8 Ballon d'Ors, a number no other player in history has come close to matching. Between 2009 and 2012, Messi entered a stretch of form that many consider the single greatest sustained individual performance in the sport's history. In the 2011-12 season alone, he scored 73 goals across all competitions for Barcelona, a European record that still stands. He was doing things statistically that simply hadn't been done before. 5 goals in a single Champions League match against Bayer Leverkusen, hat-tricks that felt routine, assists that seemed to defy the geometry of the pitch. Under Guardiola and later manager Tito Vilanova and Luis Enrique, Messi became the linchpin of a Barcelona side widely regarded as one of the greatest club teams ever assembled, nicknamed Tiki-Taka for their possession-based style, built around quick, intricate passing that Messi, alongside teammates like Xavi and Andres Iniesta, executed with mesmerizing precision. By the mid-2010s, Barcelona had built its entire attacking identity around a front three nicknamed MSN, Messi, Luis Suarez, and Neymar, widely considered the most devastating attacking trio the sport had ever seen. In the 2014-15 season, that trio combined for over 120 goals as Barcelona won another treble. Let's put some real numbers to what we're talking about here, because it's easy to say he was great, without understanding just how absurd Messi's Barcelona career actually was. Over 17 seasons with the first team, Messi became Barcelona's all-time leading scorer by an enormous margin, a record that isn't just the best in club history. It's a record that may never be broken by anyone else who plays for the club. He won 10 La Liga titles, 4 Champions Leagues, 7 Copa del Rey trophies, multiple Spanish and European Super Cups. Along the way, he collected individual scoring titles more times than any player in history. He did all of this while playing in a way that felt almost contrary to modern football's obsession with speed and power. Messi was never the biggest player on the pitch. At 5'7", he was often the smallest man on the field. But he compensated with a footballing IQ that coaches still study today, an uncanny ability to find pockets of space, to change direction at speeds defenders couldn't track, and to strike a ball with a precision that made goalkeepers look helpless. And yet, for all this individual brilliance, there was one thing missing. One prize that, for years, became the defining criticism leveled against him by fans and pundits who wanted to crown him the greatest of all time, but couldn't quite bring themselves to do it. Messi had never won the World Cup. Argentina is a country that lives and breathes football. And for decades, the nation's football identity was built around one man, Diego Maradona, who had single-handedly dragged Argentina to World Cup glory in 1986 with a mixture of genius and defiance that made him a national deity. Messi's international career began under the shadow of that comparison, and for years, it seemed to weigh on him more than any defender ever could. He made his senior debut for Argentina in 2005 and was sent off within a minute of coming on as a substitute, a bizarre and unlucky start to his international story. Over the following decade, Messi delivered brilliance for Argentina, but repeatedly fell short in the biggest moments. He lost the 2014 World Cup final to Germany. He lost back-to-back Copa America finals in 2015 and 2016, the latter loss so painful that Messi briefly announced his retirement from international football, only to be talked out of it by fans, teammates, and eventually his own resolve. Critics in Argentina and abroad seized on the disparity. Brilliant for Barcelona, they said, but somehow lesser for his country. It's a criticism that, in hindsight, ignored just how much of Argentina's success, even reaching those finals, depended entirely on Messi's individual brilliance. But criticism doesn't always deal in fairness, and for years, this narrative followed him everywhere. Then, slowly, things began to turn. In 2021, Argentina, now led by manager Lionel Scaloni and built around a hungry, well-drilled squad, won the Copa America, beating rivals Brazil in the final, played at the Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. It was Messi's first major international trophy, and the images of him finally lifting silverware for his country, breaking down in tears surrounded by teammates, marked a turning point both in his career and in how he was perceived. Later that year, Argentina and Italy, reigning champions of South America and Europe respectively, met in a one-off exhibition match dubbed the Finalissima. Argentina won convincingly, adding another trophy to Messi's growing international collection. But the biggest chapter was still to come. By the time the 2022 World Cup arrived in Qatar, Messi was 35 years old. Most assumed, correctly, that this would be his final World Cup. He'd said as much himself. This was the last chance. The tournament didn't start well. Argentina suffered a shocking opening loss to Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history, throwing the entire campaign into doubt before it had really begun. Pundits wrote them off. But Argentina regrouped, and Messi, playing with a freedom and joy that seemed almost defiant of his age, began to produce some of the best football of his career. He scored crucial goals against Mexico, Poland, Australia, and the Netherlands, dragging Argentina through the knockout rounds with a mixture of veteran composure and moments of pure individual magic. Against Croatia in the semifinal, he delivered an assist and a piece of skill, a nutmeg in turn on a helpless defender, so audacious that it instantly became one of the most replayed moments of the tournament. Then came the final. December 18, 2022. Argentina versus France at Lusail Stadium. It's now widely regarded as the greatest World Cup final ever played. Argentina raced to a 2-0 lead through a Messi penalty and a stunning team goal finished by Angel Di Maria. It looked over. But France's Kylian Mbappé produced one of the great individual performances in World Cup history, scoring twice in the space of 2 minutes late in the game to force extra time. Messi restored Argentina's lead in extra time with a close-range finish, only for Mbappé to complete a hat-trick from the penalty spot and drag the match to penalties. Argentina held their nerve. Goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez became a hero with a crucial save, and Argentina won the shootout, sealing their third World Cup title and Messi's first. The image of Messi lifting that trophy, wrapped in a black and gold bisht presented by Qatari officials, became one of the defining sports photographs of the decade. For a player who had given football almost everything except this one moment, it was closure. It silenced, once and for all, the argument that his career was somehow incomplete. Messi was named the tournament's best player, winning the Golden Ball for the second time in his career, a World Cup record. Rewind slightly, back to the summer of 2021. Something had happened that seemed almost unthinkable just a few years earlier. Lionel Messi left FC Barcelona. The circumstances were painful and largely out of his control. Barcelona, mismanaged financially for years and drowning in debt, found themselves unable to register a new contract for Messi under La Liga's strict financial fair play rules, even though Messi himself had reportedly agreed to a significant pay cut to stay. In a tearful press conference that shocked the football world, Messi announced his departure from the only club he'd ever known as a professional, ending a 21-year relationship with the institution that had raised him from a homesick, undersized 13-year-old into the greatest player of his generation. He signed with Paris Saint-Germain, joining a star-studded squad that already included Neymar and, for a period, Kylian Mbappé. On paper, it was a dream front line. In practice, Messi's 2 seasons in Paris were a mixed bag. He won 2 Ligue 1 titles and a trophy to champions, and of course, sandwiched between his 2 PSG seasons, delivered that World Cup triumph with Argentina. But domestically, PSG repeatedly fell short of their real ambition, Champions League glory, and Messi, playing in an unfamiliar league, away from the fervent Camp Nou crowds he'd known his whole career, at times looked like a genius slightly out of place. He also faced heavy criticism and even jeers from PSG's own fanbase during a rocky stretch, a jarring experience for a player used to adoration. By 2023, with his PSG contract expiring, speculation ran wild about where he'd go next. A return to Barcelona was rumored, and, by most accounts, something Messi genuinely wanted. But the club's ongoing financial troubles made a return financially and logistically difficult. Saudi Arabian clubs, flush with cash, made enormous offers. Instead, Messi chose something nobody quite expected. In July 2023, Lionel Messi signed with Inter Miami CF, a Major League Soccer club co-owned by former England international David Beckham. It wasn't the retirement move some assumed. It became one of the most transformative signings in the history of American sports. The impact was almost immediate. In his debut for the club, in a Leagues Cup match, Messi came off the bench with the game tied and scored a stoppage time free kick winner, a moment so cinematic it felt scripted. Inter Miami, a club that had been near the bottom of the MLS standings before his arrival, went on an extraordinary unbeaten run and won the Leagues Cup, the first trophy in the club's short history. The ripple effects went far beyond results on the pitch. MLS attendance and viewership figures surged wherever Miami played. Merchandise sales broke league records. Stadiums that normally struggled to sell out suddenly needed temporary expanded capacity just to meet demand whenever Messi's name was on the team sheet. Television deals were renegotiated. An entire generation of young American soccer fans got to watch, in person, a player many had only ever seen on grainy European broadcasts at odd hours. Messi extended his stay in Miami with a long-term contract running through the end of the 2028 season, effectively committing the remainder of his prime, and likely the final chapter of his professional career, to Major League Soccer. Alongside former Barcelona teammates like Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, and Sergio Busquets, whom Miami brought in specifically to surround Messi with familiar faces, the club built steadily towards silverware. That patience paid off. Inter Miami won its first ever MLS Cup title, a landmark achievement for the club, and a fitting continuation of a career defined by breaking new ground. As the 2026 season got underway, Miami also opened its new dedicated stadium, Miami Freedom Park, with, fittingly, a Messi goal in the very first game played there. Through the opening months of the 2026 MLS season, Messi has continued to defy typical athletic aging curves, contributing goals and assists at a rate that would be impressive for a player half his age, let alone one approaching his 40th birthday. Which brings us to now, 2026, and arguably the most remarkable subplot of Messi's entire career, a second consecutive World Cup, this time hosted across the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and this time as the defending champion. Few athletes in any sport get the chance to defend a World Cup title. Fewer still get to do it while nearing their 40th year on Earth. But there Messi was, named once again to Argentina's final roster despite a nagging hamstring issue that flared up just before the squad assembled for pre-tournament training camp. Argentina opened their title defense in Group J against Algeria and Kansas City, followed by matches against Austria and Jordan. Messi, still wearing the captain's armband, has continued to produce moments of decisive brilliance throughout the tournament, including a stoppage-time contribution in a dramatic comeback win over Egypt that had all of Buenos Aires erupting in celebration, watching from thousands of miles away. Commentators covering the tournament have repeatedly used a word that's followed Messi for 2 decades now: supernatural. Not bad, for a player many assumed would be nearing retirement by the time this World Cup rolled around. Whatever happens in the remainder of the tournament, Messi has made clear this is likely his final World Cup as a player. Win or lose, he'll close the book on an international career that began with an early red card as an unknown teenage substitute and may end as a two-time World Cup champion and the most decorated captain in Argentine football history. Let's step back and look at the full picture, because when you add it all up, the scale of what Messi has accomplished becomes almost hard to comprehend. Across his club and international career, Messi has won a staggering 53 trophies. That includes 10 La Liga titles for Champions Leagues, 7 Copa del Rey trophies, and 2 League One titles with PSG. It includes MLS Cup and Leagues Cup silverware with Inter Miami. And on the international stage, it includes a World Cup, multiple Copa Americas, a Finalissima trophy, and even an Olympic gold medal, one with Argentina's under-23 side back in 2008. Individually, he holds a record 8 Ballon d'Or awards, more than double what most legendary players in the sport's history have managed. He's Barcelona's all-time leading goalscorer by a massive margin. He's Argentina's all-time leading goalscorer and most capped player, with a tally of caps and goals that dwarfs the totals of legends like Maradona. For years, football fans argued endlessly about the GOAT debate, greatest of all time, usually framed as Messi versus his great rival, Cristiano Ronaldo. Both are generational talents who pushed each other to remarkable heights throughout the 2010s. But with the World Cup finally secured in 2022, and with Messi continuing to add trophies and moments of brilliance well into his late 30s, that debate has, for many, quietly settled itself. For all the records and trophies, what's remained consistent throughout Messi's career is a personality almost defiantly ordinary. He's famously private, soft-spoken, and largely uninterested in the celebrity trappings that usually surround athletes of his stature. Teammates across every club he's played for describe him the same way: quiet, humble, more comfortable letting his football speak than giving interviews. He married Antonella Rocuzzo, his childhood friend from Rosario, in 2017, in a wedding attended by teammates, celebrities, and even heads of state. The couple have 3 sons, Tiago, Mateo, and Ciro, who've grown up between Barcelona, Paris, and now Miami, often seen celebrating alongside their father after big wins. Messi has also built a significant footprint off the pitch, from the Leo Messi Foundation, which supports healthcare and education access for vulnerable children, a cause deeply personal to him given his own childhood medical struggles, to numerous business ventures and endorsement partnerships spanning apparel, hospitality, and technology. Despite the fame, despite being arguably the most recognized athlete on the planet, those closest to him consistently describe someone who never quite lost the demeanor of that shy kid who arrived in Barcelona all those years ago. The kid who just wanted to play football. It's strange to think that a career this decorated, this statistically absurd, almost didn't happen at all. If a club hadn't taken a chance on a napkin agreement. If a family hadn't uprooted their entire life for a medical treatment they couldn't afford. If a homesick, undersized teenager had decided the sacrifice wasn't worth it. Instead, we got one of the most complete careers the sport has ever produced. A player who redefined what was possible with a football at his feet, who carried the weight of a nation's football identity and eventually delivered its ultimate prize, and who, even now, in what should be the twilight of his career, is still adding to a legacy that will likely never be matched. Whatever comes next, whether this World Cup ends in glory or heartbreak, whatever comes after Miami, Lionel Messi's story is already complete. The kid who was told he might never grow tall enough became, by nearly every measure that matters, the biggest figure the sport of football has ever known.